Hi, I'm Dave, founder of Halloween Year Round. I'm here with my special guest, Gabe.
The Delco Dork?
The Delco Dork. I'll put a link in the description of other videos he's done over on Dork Daily. That's a channel that I collaborate with sometimes. My brother runs it, even though this one's better. So today we're talking about our favorite horror hot takes, because the one thing the internet and YouTube needs is more people arguing on it.
Don't you love it?
So we're just going to go back and forth and give, what are some of our biggest hot takes in horror, kind of argue about a little bit, and then, I would love to see you guys run in the comments. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? What are some of your biggest horror hot takes? So let's just jump right into it.
Kane Hodder isn't even the third best Jason actor. I'm sorry.
Explain.
I've met Kane at conventions. He seems like a cool dude. The first argument you can bring to the table is Kane's in the worst movies. And he is. I'm not going to go down my big list of Friday the 13th ranking, but to me, he brings a side to Jason that I only kind of like, and I like other portrayals better. I think he's a little too stocky. Like, he seemed to have shaved down a bunch of mass after he became a zombie and then put it back on because of Kane's build. I know Friday the 13th isn't looking for logic here, but I always look at Jason as the misunderstood guy who just goes around killing, and I think Kane's a little too visceral for my take. And I really love certain physicalities out of C.J. Graham, who feels like the T-1000. Ted White is visceral as hell, but in a really good way. Like, he's the Jason that we've been getting from 2 to 4. And then I just really love Richard Brooker's physicality and what he brings to the role because he was a former gymnast. That's what I say. Sorry, Kane.
I like the personality he brings, though. He kind of, but I see what you're saying. Like, he's supposed to be mine.
He's got some great kills.
I kind of get that, and
Kane has my favorite kill in the franchise. I'm just saying.
The sleeping bag.
No, it's the...
Oh, the liquid nitrogen?
No, it's the rooftop boxing match in Manhattan.
Oh, okay, all right.
He just punches it off, and you see the head's point of view as it goes down the building into the dumpster.
And I think the thing about Kane Hodder is most horror fans assume he's in that franchise longer than he is. I think a lot of people don't realize just how late he comes into it.
Yeah.
That it's not to what, the 7th one?
The 7th one. Up? AKA Jason fights telekinesis.
AKA Jason versus Carrie. I can also confirm Kane is a really cool guy. I actually peed next to him at a urinal.
That's awesome.
At Monster Mania once. It was really weird and awkward, but it's my claim to fame now. It's not a bad thing that older franchises are being left alone, and they should be left alone. Allow me to explain. A lot of people are upset that it's been a long time since we've gotten a Friday the 13th movie and a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I think it's okay these franchises are being left alone. Look what studios are doing with Halloween, with Michael Myers, with Exorcist. Yes, they're great classic movies, and I feel like horror fans are always like, we need more content from it. We need more content. Do we? Because we can just go back and watch those original movies and enjoy them without having to keep rehashing them. Like, think about every major franchise, like, anytime a newer requel or sequel or reboot or whatever comes out, all we talk about is, oh, it pays homage to the original. Can't we just enjoy the original then? Like, why do we need Ghostface in Manhattan? Did we need Jason in Manhattan? Well, sorry, Jason on a boat and a tiny bit in Manhattan. I'm just saying that I'm okay with franchises being left alone, and I know, yes, I get that horror is the one genre in Hollywood that you are still getting, like, original movies being made. But
some ludicrous ideas, but yes.
They are. But at the same time, I feel like so much energy is devoted to long-lasting franchises that I don't know that we necessarily need them. So when people complain and are upset that we haven't gotten a new Friday the 13th movie in a long time, I'm okay. If the 2009 remake was the last time we saw Jason Voorhees, I'm okay with it because that was actually a pretty good remake. I said my piece.
I feel like your argument, I agree to an extent. I agree that way with every genre but horror.
Horror is the one exception.
It is, because, I'm not going to lie. The stuff like when you look back at something like Halloween, to me, the proper end of that franchise is Halloween H2O, and I've seen all the movies since, and I even own some of them, thanks to box sets, even though I kind of don't want some of them. You should let some stuff die, but I wouldn't say die completely. I just say give it enough time. Something like a Friday the 13th, I'll eat it up in a second.
He will.
Because that's a franchise. It's like, it can't really go any lower. He's already been to space. Give us something creative. Why not? You know, if you're going to take like a legendary character like Michael Myers and do what with Blumhouse or Rob Zombie did with him, I understand that. Because, like, yeah, it does kind of tarnish. But, like, Jason's got nowhere to go but up. And I wouldn't mind seeing at least one more time with Robert Englund. I actually have a personal... I have an idea who I want to play Freddy one day, but that's not really a hot take.
It's not Jackie Earle Haley, is it?
Walton Goggins.
I see it. I still think leave the franchise alone, but I see it.
Sidney Prescott is the better final girl than Laurie Strode. You've tarnished Laurie too much. And honestly, there's only a handful of the movies. She's now overtaken Dr. Loomis in being more entries in the franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was always Team Loomis. I always felt like he had a better effect on Michael. First two movies, she's essentially just a survivor. She gets off by the skin of her teeth. Mm-hmm. And then when they bring her back, like, she kicks ass in H2O. That's her best performance as far as I'm concerned. I liked her in the 2018. Then after that, I don't know what the hell Blumhouse did. As far as I'm concerned, and here's the crazy thing. I haven't seen Scream 5.
The first rule of surviving a stab movie. Never answer the...
I'm bored.
Wait!
And I still think this way about Sydney, and I don't even like 4 that much. But I think she knows how to kick ass. And yeah, you can always throw that meta aspect in as how she could potentially relate to the decision, because they always make those kind of jokes like, a woman wouldn't do that, or she wouldn't do that. Why are you running down this hallway? Blah, 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 blah. But, especially now that I think Laurie Strode has been tarnished, and also, all due respect to Jamie Lee, if you guys horror fans, you guys know this, that whole encounter with Scout Compton and Daniel Harris, and the fact that she retroactively talks crap on H2O, that doesn't help my argument either.
I get that. I think it's a little... Maybe it's a little unfair to compare them only because we haven't seen what the future holds for Sidney Prescott and where that franchise... She's
coming back. We know that.
That's what I mean. As of right now, that's the kind of way it stands. And I don't really even disagree with you that much, because I think Sidney Prescott, I think for any horror fan, Sidney Prescott is like top 3 final girl, up there with Laurie Strode. Like, I don't know anyone who wouldn't put her up there. For me personally, Kirsty Cotton from Hellraiser is my favorite. That's a whole other argument for a different day. But, like, I put the 3 of them up there in the same league.
Is there anybody else really at that ceiling? I don't think.
No, I really like Sienna in Terrifier 2, but she has not been in enough movies yet to get... She's not at that status yet. She might get there, but as of right now, she still has a ways to go to reach that legendary status. But I don't disagree with you entirely. How many times has Jamie Lee appeared now? Is it 7? The first 2...
Resurrection...
H2O Resurrection, and then the
Blumhouse trilogy.
So we can't... She's been in it so many times, we can't even use the Loomis 6 times joke of how many times has Laurie Strode appeared in...
What do you mean? I don't remember that beginning of Resurrection at all.
I don't think horror has to be fun to be enjoyed. Allow me to explain.
Please.
So I've seen a lot of discourse on the internet about certain horror movies. They're like, oh, this one, this slasher movie was fun. This one was fun, where they think that if a horror movie is just bleak or disturbing, people don't like it because it's bleak and disturbing. And it's like, that's kind of the point. I've seen so many people complain about, movies being too dark or too depressing, and it's like The Mist is one of my favorite. See, he just groaned.
No, I'm not groaning because I love that movie.
It's that ending.
Because I wasn't sitting with your argument at first, but then I know where you're going now.
Horror is supposed to disturb you. Yes, it's great to have a slasher movie with a few jokes in there. It's great to have a movie that, is a fun watch. But if a horror movie makes you feel uncomfortable,
Twist that knife.
it's supposed to. And it gets on me that, like, I'm going to talk about Rob Zombie for just a second. Just a second. A common criticism I get is that, all of the characters in his movies are unlikable.
Well, I just say flat out, if this is a hot take, he's a bad writer.
That's the point. Not that he's a bad writer. The point is, they're supposed to be on the... If a horror movie's goal is to just disturb you and make you feel repulsed, it did its job. That's all I have to say on that matter.
I think horror lends itself. It's very much a wide open genre that can incorporate a lot of stuff. That's for everybody, and I definitely feel you. There's a time and place for everything, and when a movie really punches you in the gut, man, you're like, damn, kudos to you. I got to give you a round of applause. Mm-hmm. But you're talking to a guy, like, look at me. I'm wearing a Dream Warrior shirt. Probably, to me, other than, like, horror and sci-fi, they're kind of like brother and sister, but to me, like, give me a Reese's Cup, peanut butter and chocolate, horror and comedy. That's probably my favorite stuff that I have in any genre. You can give me some really messed up stuff, but if you follow it up with some really good quips, if you can execute it, sometimes there's some cringe moments. But me personally, I'm not going to take that as like, I get you. I want some horror movies that are messed up, and I know that's what they're supposed to do. But I think the genre lends itself, because it can assimilate a lot of other subgenres, to be, a wide open thing for anybody to enjoy, as long as it's got the label of horror on it. At least that's what I think. I think the second best and most underrated subgenre of horror is the anthology. And I'm holding this in a big wide open bubble for a reason. There is still some anthology stuff that I have not seen. I have not seen all of American Horror Story, even some old episodes of Tales from the Dark Side, or even stuff more recent like the Creepshow series. However, because it's all-encompassing genre of being an anthology, you get all kinds of stories that involve everything that horror can encompass, like a sci-fi, or a monster, or anything like apocalyptic. Anything you can bring to the table to make it creative, to make a cohesive story. Yes, there's some weak anthologies out there, but I think when they're really, really, really good, 3 in particular, one that's a black and white show hosted by Rod Serling, another one that's an HBO series hosted by our favorite wisecracking puppet, and a certain movie written by Stephen King and directed by George Romero, that makes it a juggernaut subgenre to me, that it can also encompass other stuff, to where it's just, other than slashers, that's right there to me. As much as I love vampires, werewolves, all these monster movies, you can get that in anthologies too. And that's why I think when you can tell isolated stories, sometimes you can find gold.
I'm not going to disagree with your take, because I love anthologies. I don't know that I would say that they're underrated. They're not my favorite subgenre. I don't even know that I would categorize anthology as a subgenre, because it's not like calling something an anthology is like saying, oh, this is a TV show versus a movie. It's like a medium less than it is a subgenre, like sci-fi, horror, slasher, supernatural.
I see what you mean.
I think the only thing with anthologies that I don't like is, in any one of them, you're going to have, like you said, there's always the weak story.
There's some duds.
There's always the weak one. There's the one you like most.
I will defend Creepshow too. I don't care what anybody says. It's not a good movie, but I'm entertained with it.
I think it's best with an anthology if I know how many stories are in it going in, because I feel weird, like, it's like you get pumped up for one story, and then it's over, and then...
Are you using examples of a movie or a series? Like
a movie that has, like, are there 3, are there 4, are there 5
like a Tales from the Dark Side,
yeah.
Or... Yeah, I got you. Trick or Treat. Well, that's kind of a...
That's a Pulp Fiction. That's not...
It's an anthology, though. Kind of.
I hesitate to call it that. Tales of Halloween. Great anthology movie.
The Willies. Underrated.
So...
See, folks? You might be agreeing with me. Okay, if you want to call it a medium, I always said it was a subgenre.
But I also think that in modern Hollywood, an anthology, aside from, like, stuff being released on TV or on streaming, it's tough to sell that as, like, a feature movie anymore.
Even the horror fans will come out in droves for something more small scale?
So the last horror anthology I saw in theaters was Satanic Hispanics. And it didn't get a very wide release. I had to drive an hour to go to a theater that was playing it.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it's probably lends itself.
It was good. I
At least in
enjoyed
this
it.
current era right now, it probably lends itself to episodic television.
Stream it on Shudder. Satanic Hispanics. Check it out. You won't be disappointed.
I've never even seen it, so
Watch it on Shudder.
There you go.
I like the Fright Night remake more than the original. Here's why. I don't dislike the Fright Night, the original. It's a great movie. I love Chris Sarandon. You know, he's great in everything. It has that like old school like monster movie. It almost feels like a Hammer movie made like 20 years later.
It's definitely got that inspiration. Tom Holland has talked about it.
Yeah, I love it. And maybe it's because I saw the remake first.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
I'll
give you that.
To me, the trifecta of performances from Anton Yelchin, may he rest in peace. He was a great actor. Colin Farrell and David Tennant are just perfect. The energy of it, that this was this was the Twilight era, and here was this vampire movie where the vampire was just evil. He was evil because he was evil. He was a monster. He was vicious. He was unyielding. He was relentless. And you had David Tennant at the height of his Doctor Who fame as this like fake magician, but also vampire hunter. Yes, I know you said earlier that the CG is not great.
It's not.
Fine. It was 2011. But just in terms of when I go back and I rewatch both of them, I prefer to watch the new one, and it's the one I remember most. So, first one's still great. Don't hate me, don't unsubscribe.
I'm not going to get mad at you. I remember you telling me this earlier, and I tilted my head at you.
He did. He was like...
I like the Fright Night remake. I've seen it in theaters. I have only watched a handful of times since, but I think you're right about Tennant and Yelkin and Farrell. They're all good. It's not a shot-for-shot remake, but it is fairly close. I enjoy it. But Fright Night is my favorite horror movie. Or not. Had to stop myself there. That would have been a huge hot take.
That's his other hot take.
No. Fright Night is my favorite vampire movie. And it always will be. If you want to argue maybe something like Near Dark or The Lost Boys, fine. But is there a better vampire movie in the 80s?
I don't know. Fright Night doesn't have any saxophones in it.
Whatever. I get you, the glistening guy on the beach.
That's what I mean.
I do love Lost Boys too. Fright Night to me is so perfect. It is in a high echelon of one of my favorite horror movies ever, especially of that genre. I love the performances in that too. You got to talk about William Ragsdale is not a household name, but he has been in things. Chris Sarandon's always great, and I love Roddy McDowall. I love their dynamic, and Peter and Charlie especially are great. Where are those figures, Necka? Come on. I love me some Fright Night figures, but that movie is amazing. I love everything, the atmosphere. It really put Tom Holland on, and then he became, we're not talking Spider-Man, we're talking the horror director. Did you know he's the uncle of Dexter Holland from The Offspring?
I did not know that.
So there you go, folks.
I know that director Tom Holland always tweets before there's a Spider-Man announcement, I'm about to get tagged in a whole lot of things by people that don't realize I'm not Spider-Man.
Practical effects, great score from Brad Fiedel, who did Terminator. Great direction, good mood, atmosphere. I love everything about that movie. I'm going to give it as far, and I know you're going to get mad at this, I would rather watch Fright Night Part 2 from '89 over the Fright Night remake. I like it as a good, fun sequel. I don't know. I'm a sucker for horror and comedy. I love Fright Night, and I'm going to disagree with you, but at least you're not going to say it was a terrible movie.
No, it is a good movie.
There are some remakes out there that I think can hold a candle, and that's a decent enough one. Halloween Resurrection is a better movie than Halloween Kills.
What?
Halloween Kills delivers on its premise, or its title, I should say. Yeah, the kills are fine. The rest of the movie is Laurie Strode out of commission, and yeah, she builds up a relationship with Frank. Fine. There is no clear protagonist in this movie. And everybody makes way dumber decisions than I would have ever thought possible. I get it was the mob mentality. It was right out of the pandemic where we were seeing people at each other's throats, and I guess that's what hit so close. But my God, I'm sorry, where that whole town is there, and there's the one woman holding an iron, and then
they made a Facebook group for her.
I know, Resurrection, and then when they mistake that guy for Michael when he jumps off the roof, Tommy Doyle is a complete disgrace in that movie. I'm sorry, Anthony Michael Hall.
The guy that was built like Danny DeVito.
So Resurrection's not good at all. Trick or treat, motherfucker. We all know that. That's terrible. But at least we know the clear protagonist. I don't even remember her name. I'm not going to sing the praises of Resurrection. Bianca Collick's character. When she's in the house and she needs the help of what's his face from. His name's Deckard, I think. They're on the phone and they're doing the webcam stuff. There's at least some tension there, and at least the kills aren't terrible. And I like the Michael actor as much as I like James Dew Courtney in the new movies. He's a little too visceral, and I guess that's what they're going for. But I like some of the more stylistic kills. I like the atmosphere of the house. I think it's a neat enough concept. It's, like as you like to say, they tried something different. The movie's not good, but I can find more entertainment in that than a movie that just pisses me off and ruins a lot of the characters that we cared about. Like the way Marion Chambers and Tommy Doyle, wasted. Complete and utter disgrace. It's disgusting. And, who the hell are we even following this movie? Michael, I guess it's his Empire Strikes Back. Fine, but it's not executed well. And I have no urge to want to watch it again. I would sooner watch Ends.
Wow. That was...
I think, other than Rob Zombie's remakes, Kills is the worst movie in the franchise.
I actually like the Rob Zombie ones, but I'm not here to talk about that today.
We've argued about it before. If you guys want to find that video, go ahead.
I'll put a link in the description to our Rob Zombie one, because I'm not having that argument again. I'll say this.
Rob Zombie purists I'm going to say you're a purist. You'll argue for the movie and you'll have some arguments, but we'll hear you, but we're not going to hear you.
I think... Well, the big difference is Kills takes itself seriously. Resurrection does not.
Yeah, that helps too.
And Resurrection does goofier things. So, I think that's why it's hard for me to...
They both do stupid stuff with Laurie Strode.
I mean, they do. But, to kill her off in the opening scene like that, and
also the way they came back from... I get what you're saying. Oh, it's another one of those... We mistook Michael for this guy who's clearly not his build.
Yes, Resurrection retcons something so iconic at the end of H2O. I'm not saying Kills is a perfect movie. In a weird way, though, for the Blumhouse trilogy, Kills is my favorite. And it's not...
There's your hot take.
It's not that it's that much better. It's that the other two were worse.
I thought 2018 was good. I thought there was a decent enough return to form, but whatever.
We'll get to that.
The only thing that Kills has that I enjoy is the score and that opening stuff with Loomis that kind of only sort of... It went nowhere.
Name a more badass scene in the Halloween franchise than Michael picking up his mask when he's cornered on the street and he's like, bring it. And they play the music and he picks up the mask.
I mean, it's almost like it looks like an RPG boss battle where you're just trying to knock down his HP with crappy weapons. I'm sorry. I mean, everything with Karen at the end was dumb. It's so stupid.
Neither are good movies.
They're not.
So
I own both, and I haven't watched either of them in years.
I'm not going to argue that much with you because this is not a matter of
Michael and Halloween used to be so credible. I know we're talking about horror movie franchises here, but leading up to Resurrection, the movie sucks. I remember growing up and being a teenager, and Resurrection was a low then. But we were talking about these movies had credibility, and now I just feel like the Blumhouse trilogy kind of more or less. I know Resurrection did them, and so did Rob Zombies. And I can't take Halloween seriously anymore. So I think that's really at the crux of everything.
And my final hot take is, I think Stranger Things is incredibly overrated.
I'm not going to disagree.
He has not heard this one before. Allow me to explain. I don't dislike the show. I love the show. I watch it. I review it. I get into the characters and all that. But just the way that it took the world by storm, and the way that it permeated into pop culture, and everyone's obsessed with it. The show on its own doesn't really offer anything new or unique. It's like nostalgia, the show. And it's like, how many 80s everything can we just throw at the audience that doesn't even make sense with, like... Okay, here's an example. So, in the first season of Stranger Things, Jonathan has a poster of Evil Dead in his room. That same one right behind us there. Except, who would have that in 1983?
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense.
Unless you were so hardcore, like you're like one of those minuscule amount of people that saw the Evil Dead in the U.S. at the time. Or you went to the Cannes Film Festival, and I know Jonathan did with his family's money.
Yeah, he didn't go there living in the middle of, nowhere, Hawkins, Indiana.
Yeah, Hawkins.
So, it's a fun show. I just don't think it's treated like it's the greatest thing in the world, but everything that people like about it is like, name a season people like, and the things they like about it are its references to other things. Like, oh, the first season's so cool because it's basically like E.T. meets the X-Files meets a slasher movie.
And the Goonies.
And like, season 3 was cool because they did Red Dawn. And like, season 4, did Silence of the Lambs, but with Robert Englund. And it's like, okay, but we all of those movies already exist. And what does the show do on its own? It's like, some of the best period horror movies are ones that feel like they actually could have come from that era. Look at something like Ty West. I know he's big right now with, his trilogy and Maxine. House of the Devil is set in the early 80s, and you feel like it could have been actually shot in the early 80s. Because in the 80s, they weren't referencing everything going on in that time. It would be like if you did a movie set today, but the characters were just spouting off pop culture things that were trending on Twitter right now. It doesn't make any sense. And again, I don't dislike the show. I just don't think it's the greatest thing in the world.
You think it's a little overblown?
And it is, and it relies way too heavily on nostalgia to the point that, I mean, okay, I was born at the end of the 80s. I can't speak to this, but it doesn't represent what the 80s was actually like, just what we think it was like and what we wanted to be like in Hollywood.
Okay, so let me chime in on this. And don't worry, I'm kind of on your side. I've always said, and this is, horror series are tricky, because I'll say this, at least Stranger Things has got me invested. Well, I don't know when the hell the damn season's coming back, most of the time. It's not
They're filming it right now.
It's not like something like Walking Dead that went off a cliff. I've always said that Stranger Things is an almost great show. My issue with them, and I get you, it's an 80s feel for people like, hey, we're in our 30s and 40s, like, hey, remember that? But also, like, I get you, like, stuff like Jonathan wouldn't have had that Evil Dead poster. There's stuff that I always point out.
And, like, that's just one of a million things.
Yeah, and then, like, it's very much nostalgia and pop culture, which is great, because especially if you're a millennial or a Gen Xer, it's great to see those nods, and it's like, that's cool, and we got this and that. My biggest problem is the writing. And granted, I don't think they overstay their welcome with their episode count, like Walking Dead does, where, I shit on Walking Dead. Just too many episodes from AMC's point of view where it's just like, how long are we going to take to get to the big plot that's going on? It's just walking and talking. But Stranger Things' biggest problem is the cast is ballooning, and they don't have the balls to kill anybody other than that fan-favorite character for a season, like Eddie, spoiler, Eddie, or Bob, or Smirnoff, what was his name? Alexei. Yeah, it's like, have the balls to kill some of these characters, because, I'm sorry, Duffer Brothers and Stranger Things fans, some of them kind of suck. I can't stand Will or Jonathan. Kill them both by now. I'm tired of them. And honestly, the more that Eleven's humanized, I like her less. And Mike's whining too.
They didn't have the balls to let Hopper stay.
But I love me Uncle Steve. Uncle Steve is great. He has come completely around. He's like, I used to hate that guy, and he's like one of my favorite characters. Him and Hopper and Dustin are great. What
they did with Steve's character is probably the best thing they did on the show.
Yes.
But just, yeah, it's too reliant on... It feels like the member berries from South Park turned into a TV show.
That's what it feels like a lot of legacy trailers are right now. Oh, I remember.
And Stranger Things debuted right around... It was in 2016. It was right around that era that was starting.
Member berries.
And it kind of led... I think that was the literal year that episode aired. So, these are just our hot takes.
What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments.
Like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. If you don't, you may end up trapped, not in any of these horror movies, but in a room with us arguing relentlessly.
We can go all day. We're
can.
like Steve Rogers.
And as always, every day is Halloween.